Hello and welcome to this month's The Western Mass Democrat. I'm your host, Joseph Kaczynski. This month we have the mayor of East Hampton on, Mike Tautznik. Mike, welcome to the show.
Joe, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for taking the drive up and sitting down and have a conversation with us.
It's always good to come to Greenfield.
Thank you, thank you. Mike, we have a lot of questions, but I want to get to know Mike a little bit better. Tell us about Mike Tautznik and your journey in becoming mayor and the only mayor of East Hampton.
Yeah, it's been an exciting journey. I started volunteering for the town of East Hampton back in the mid-'70s, and I served on the Conservation Commission, a couple of zoning task forces, various committees, served as an elected town meeting member for 19 years, a member of the Board of Selectmen for 7. And we had 2 charter changes during that period of time, and one in 1985 that made wholesale changes to the town form of government, left the town form of government with 5 selectmen and an administrator. And that charter went into effect in 1986, and it wasn't successful. And over the course of 10 years, we really didn't have much direction. The voters decided that they wanted to try something different and created the charter that we voted on in 1996 that created the mayor. And I was one of 7 candidates for the original seat.
Okay.
We looked at where the community was at the time, and really, my wife and I, we really are. We live, breathe, eat East Hampton, and we needed to be sure that the community was going to be successful. And so we looked at the people that were running and thought that I offered a certain level of skills that were important, and we were successful. And this is now, I'm running for my 8th term.
Wow, 8 terms. So Mike, were you born and raised in East Hampton?
Born and raised in the community. My dad built the house that I live in with timber off of Mount Tom that he and my grandfather sawed. I've never moved. I live in that same home that I grew up in. Yep,
yeah, it's a wonderful. Tell us a little bit, you kind of gave us the charter history, but I want to know about East Hampton, the size of the city, kind of its budget, some of the background information.
Yeah, we're 14 square miles. We have a little over 16,000 people.
Okay.
Annual operating budget has been pretty flat for the last 5 or 6 years, and it's running around $34 million. If you add grants and the other activity that we do with trust funds, our annual operations are between $38 and $42 million.
Okay.
Big community, strong mayor form of government. So the community has been under this form of government now for 15 years, and we've been very successful.
Okay, is that a type A form of government?
Well, it's a home rule charter, very much like Greenfield, where the community selected kind of how they would rule. So you would call it a form of type A charter, not the charter that's actually in state law, but a charter that gives the mayor a lot of day-to-day authority, a lot of executive authority. Still lots of checks and balances, city council approve appointments, that sort of thing. Yeah. I think maybe Greenfield, the mayor has a little bit more authority from the appointments point of view. All mayors in Massachusetts are responsible for their budgets.
Yes, yes.
And so all of our charters would reflect that responsibility.
Yeah. Mike, you were describing East Hampton, and I'm saying to myself, you're describing Greenfield. It's almost...
We are sister communities. I, for a couple of years, served as the volunteer staff for the Western Mass Association of Mayors. And so I studied all the communities, and Greenfield and East Hampton share a lot of similarities when you look at the dollars and cents of the community. We're both pretty severely affected by the costs of charter and choice. And that has an impact on our education funding. And so we're both working very hard to try to make sure that we offer opportunities for more kids to be in our school system. East Hampton's building a brand new high school.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. And you touched on an important subject, and it's the municipal budget. You've been mayor a long time. I want to get your take on crafting budgets. Is it getting more difficult? Is it more frustrating? It's kind of the whole budget process. Well,
you're right when you want to talk about the budgets. That is the glue that holds all the operations together, and that's really it's been a very difficult task since 2003 for most communities. 2003 was the beginning of a cyclical recession that really never recovered from the point of view of state aid. And so we've had difficulty, and all communities have, in dealing with the cuts in state aid when we are capped at what we can raise, and as we should be, with property taxes. And so we've had to do more with less. Innovation is really the name of the game these days when you're looking at how do you deliver the basic services that people require in all aspects of their lives, whether it's education or public safety, public works, parks, recreation, senior services. How do you do all of that on a shrinking dime? And we've really embraced innovation and changing and regionalizing and doing everything we can to do more with less.
Yeah. To kind of off on a sidebar here, Mike, does
Sure.
East Hampton have the meals tax? Was that?
Yes, we did. We approved the meals tax now about a year ago.
Okay, okay.
And it's added that 0.75% to the meals. I haven't noticed that. I eat out all the time. I think that it's been helpful for us. It really has helped to close the gap a little bit. Our income is estimated just a little over $80,000. From the meals tax. It's not a big chunk of money, but it's another form of funds that can hire police officers, teachers, firefighters.
Yeah, it's so
you
important.
name it.
And I remember my time on the city council here in Greenfield, and the frustrating thing, putting together budget's one that you go through the steps. Okay, here's the money we have, but it's the lack of control over your revenue sources.
Yes.
Property taxes are capped, and for a lot of particularly seniors, it's a regressive tax. They're on fixed incomes, and you're hesitant to, well, we can't just raise property taxes so we get more money. And with the cost of health insurance, a lot of that new growth of property tax was just absorbed there. You couldn't hire a single police officer, a single firefighter. It was so frustrating from a generating revenue source. You know, gee, I had a lot of great ideas. A lot of the city councilors, the mayor had great ideas, but how do you pay for them?
Well, that's it. That's the key. I mean, we all have wonderful ideas and we all have aspirations, and we'd like to do more with what we have. But when you don't have the funds for it, you have to figure it out. We've embraced conservation as a way to actually make money to be able to invest in the services that people need. We've just replaced 469 street lights with LED lights.
Wow.
That's gonna save a total of about $36,000 a year. We're installing photovoltaic cells on a landfill, and that's going to be a power purchase agreement similar to what Greenfield's starting to go through, and that'll probably make, well, I think it's been projected at $1.4 million over the 10-year contract, but I'm estimating the first year $80,000 to $100,000.
Wow.
And that's money that we're going to avoid spending on power, that we're going to be able to spend on the things that we need to keep going. You're right about fixed costs going up, and we are limited. New growth is slower with the economy the way it is. And so we are limited to that 2.5% tax increase that the law allows us. And it's tough for people to even absorb that. Our taxpayers have been generous. This new high school is being paid for through a debt exclusion. And so we've been very lucky. And I don't want to jump ahead of you.
No, because it's the next question. And I saw the story, and it was on Mass Live, all the websites, all the newspapers, that this high school is actually coming in under budget.
Yes, very much so.
It seemed like everybody was thoroughly pleased down in East Hampton. So it's great to always hear that, because normally it's a story about it's over budget.
Yeah, and some projects you run into things that cause them to go a little bit over budget. We were aware of the bidding situation, and hopeful that we'd get a good contractor that would come in for a very fair price. We accepted the low bidder, which was Fontaine Brothers, a contractor that we're very familiar with, a union shop. They came in about $1 million under their next nearest bidder.
Wow.
And so that bid came in very, very attractive. Overall, it was $3 million. The construction project was $3 million less than we had budgeted for. So that money was saved right away. We also took advantage of some very good bond rates, and we were able to put $14 million. We're going to need to finance about $15.5 million of this $41 million project. And we put $14 million under long-term financing already at just under 3.5%.
Wow, that's a bargain.
Saved, again, looking at our estimates, that saved about $750,000.
Wow. So is the new high school, is that, are we looking at the students will be moved and the old high school's raised and they're going to put a new one in the same spot?
Exactly. We're using the existing site. We're building a building that's about 20% larger, and the main feature that it's going to have that the current one doesn't have is a sizable auditorium. But it'll have a conventional 3-story education wing, photovoltaic cells on top of it, and we're building it next to the existing school. So right now there's about 18 feet between the closest foundation pier and the existing building, and a construction fence in that 18 feet that keeps everybody safe. We poured the first concrete about 3 weeks ago. We expect steel erection to begin in November, so it's moving right along.
That's pretty quick, and I'm sure the faculty and students are all excited.
Everyone is. We're planning on moving students in the spring of 2013. So that we can prepare the old building for demolition. It has asbestos floor tile, some asbestos in the caulking around the windows, that sort of thing that has to be dealt with before we can demolish it. Demolish the building over the summer of 13, and the first full year of classes will be the 13-14 school year. We're excited.
Yeah, it's important. I know a number of high schools in the valley, including Greenfields, are, you know, we're talking the Eisenhower administration when these were built or even refurbished, let alone built brand new, and the quality of them is just so depressing. You go in there and things, and you know, it gets back to money.
Yep.
Does the school committees and the mayors and the select boards have the money to, you maintain them as best you can, they're clean, they're safe, but things wear out and break down after decades, so it's nice to see a community actually get a new high school.
Well, yes, thank you, and it's important that we do this project right and that we bring this project in under budget, because we're going to be asking the voters to look at our elementary schools someday. It won't be in the next year or so, but it'll be, you know, in the foreseeable future, and we want to show them that we're responsible, that we can do this job for what we ask or less.
Okay. We've talked a lot about schools, the budgets, and I had the Mayor Greenfield on many months ago, and I asked him a very similar question, and it was about the impact of communities like East Hampton and Greenfield having a mayoral form of government, and he said it gave him an advantage, and I wanted to get your take. Do you think towns like, or cities like Greenfield and East Hampton have an advantage?
Well, I think you have an advantage in the city because you have a single executive, and that single executive can make decisions and be a champion for issues. As a member of the Board of Selectmen, we work through many initiatives, but in order to get, we like to work with consensus. Most boards like to try to get consensus, and so we discovered that by the time we got consensus on a lot of the difficult projects, there wasn't enough left of anyone's particular idea for a champion to emerge. And so that's really, I think, the big difference is that a mayor can be a champion of the issues. You know, a mayor works with his community, in our case, city council, and in Bill's case, I'm sure the town council, and the boards and committees, and you look at what you want to do, you determine where you're going, and you try to move forward. And with a single executive, with some authority, especially when it comes to, you know, where you're putting the money, that it does have a, for us, it has a much better effect than when we were a town.
Yeah. It's I served, and people are probably sick of hearing this, but I served on the 2 charter commissions here in Greenfield, and there was always that sense of people couldn't pinpoint it, but there was the lowest common denominator. And you hit the nail right on the head, Mike, when it came down, the ideas got so watered down, going through so many people, that at the end, what did we have?
Well,
and there wasn't a single. Occasionally, a community will get a really dominant personality as a selectman, and he might be able to. But that's a shot in the dark too. That doesn't always happen.
That's correct.
And the mayor, the office of mayor, at least gives a person the authority to say, wait a minute, I'm going to, like you said, champion cause X, Y, or Z, and we need it because of, and the mayor has the bully pulpit. I think that's
exactly it. It is a bully pulpit. Oftentimes people ask, you know, my office to do things, and we respond to any request. We meet with people. I have kind of an open door policy, and but sometimes people are surprised that we don't have, we're not king. You know, we don't have the kind of authority to just make things happen. We work within the same rules that everyone else works within. But working within those rules, you can be a champion, and most issues require someone who's going to stay there for the long course. We dredged National Pond 2 years ago. That was a 30-year project.
Wow.
You know, it took 30 years from the point that we began to try to buy the pond, because it was privately owned right in the downtown. Yes. But it was owned by the mills, because we were an old mill town.
Oh, yeah.
And the mill wanted to sell, and the selectmen wouldn't buy, and so we created a nonprofit trust, and a bunch of citizens got together, and we did boat rides on the pond and pointed out the value, and politically convinced the selectmen to buy it, and that was in 1985.
Okay, wow.
And so finally we dredged it. And so the high school project took, since 1999, took 11 years, well, 10 years to go.
Yeah.
And so every project needs a champion, and they need someone who keeps leaning into the project, keeps the project moving forward.
Yeah, again, not to belabor the point, but we were talking about it before we started taping, and how the mayor can, like you said, push things along, and the perception. It's just so important, that single executive. And that kind of leads me to my next question is, and I think you might have answered it just a few minutes ago, Mike, what do you think is the biggest misconception that people have of the office of mayor?
Well, I think there's two. One is the one I just mentioned, that there's some sort of supreme authority involved in holding the job. And the second one is that many people think it's really a figurehead job, and it really is a management job. In all of the especially the smaller communities, Greenfield, East Hampton are great examples of that, where the mayor needs to be making the day-to-day decisions, needs to be watching day-to-day what's happening with the income, where's the money being spent, approving purchase orders, looking at purchasing, looking at initiatives, trying to drive things, everyone in the same direction. But we don't have the authority to just go out and say, we're going to do this X, Y, and Z, you know, because there are checks and balances, as there should be in every government.
Yeah, it's important.
Yep.
A very similar question, but this applies to the city of East Hampton. Like you said, you were born and raised in East Hampton. You obviously know East Hampton very well. In the Valley in Western Massachusetts, what do you think is not known, or what should be known about East Hampton that isn't?
Well, there's a lot more known about East Hampton now than there was 10 years ago. We've really focused on getting the message out about my community. We're an economical place to do business. We're centrally located. We're not far from anywhere you want to be in the Valley.
Yep.
And I think that that's probably the message that we're still trying to deliver, that we're a destination, that there are things to do in East Hampton. Greenfield has the advantage from the perspective that it's the county seat. And so Greenfield is the hub here in Franklin County, and so people are naturally drawn here. East Hampton isn't. You know, East Hampton is the little sister to Northampton, or just over the mountain from Holyoke. But East Hampton has a whole lot to offer, and that's part of the effort, the vision, to use a term moving forward, is that we want to make sure that East Hampton becomes the kind of destination it can be. We have parks and bike paths and beautiful ponds and all kinds of things to offer tourists. And so we should be a part of where you know, if you're visiting Western Mass, or if you're in Western Mass and you want to go someplace nice, East Hampton should be on your list.
Yeah, it's right there. I think, East Hampton, isn't that way away from Northampton? I've talked to people for years. I've lived in the Valley my whole life, Greenfield, and East Hampton's such a nice town. No, it's if you go to Northampton, it's just literally down the
8
road.
minutes.
Yeah, it's not. People get this perception sometimes that they point to the map and it's way west. No, it's not. So, but it is. But like I said, it's come so far with the mayoral form of government. It's really been put on the map. And that's so important.
We've got a great community, a lot of wonderful people. The arts are taking off in the community. We really do embrace small business. We all realize, I think, that those large employers that we think are out there really aren't banging on our doors. The employment in our neck of the woods is built one job at a time by small business people, and so we're very supportive. We had a grant program. We loaned $183,000 to small businesses in East Hampton to help them move forward, to open up. And so all of those things are part and parcel of the fabric of who we are.
Yeah, it's so important. That's a good point. The days of the huge factories with 2,000 or 3,000 people are probably not going to ever come back. They're just, those type of jobs just aren't here or there. There's big factories, cars, and a few things, but by and large, you're right. It's small businesses that are the real economic engine, so to speak. I don't want to use a cliche term, but it's true.
Well, and when we changed our zoning in the mid-'90s, when I was on the board, so that we could use this asset, these old factory buildings, which are wonderful, wonderful buildings, very sound, not really conducive to current manufacturing techniques, but how do we reuse them? And so we've created zoning that allows all kinds of different uses in these factories, and that's really been important from the investor's perspective. From the guy who's buying the building and making the investment and trying to get it up and running.
Okay, I want to completely shift gears here and talk about electoral politics. And you've been mayor a long time. You've run a number of elections. I wanted to get your impression. What's changed since you first got involved in electoral politics 10, 15 years ago?
The way that the message is received or delivered. When my first election was running for the Board of Public Works in the late 1970s, then, and to be honest, up through the last maybe 8 years ago, you reached people conventional ways. You did newspaper, local radio station advertising, flyers. That was kind of the way that you did outreach in local elections. These days, there's a lot of people that don't get the newspaper. There are a lot of people that get their news from places other than radio. We're really a small electorate, and so you don't really use television in my market because it reaches much too large of a market, with the exception of local access. And so now we look at Facebook, we look at social networking, and how do you connect with people that way? And you try to be available. You know, that's one of the reasons for the open door policy, is that when you're a working mayor, when you actually have kind of staff responsibilities. You need to make sure that people have an opportunity to see you and to talk to you, because you get your ideas from others and you get input from other people.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I think all good elected officials should be doing is making themselves available anywhere they can. I mean, I shop in town, I eat in town, and people ask me anytime that I'm out questions about the community, and it's my job to respond to them. And so I'm hopeful that kind of ties into that whole idea that, when you're getting reelected, people want to elect someone who's going to be successful, who has been successful, who has the right experience, but someone that they know that they can reach out to.
Yeah.
And so that's really kind of been our focus right along, is to be accessible.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of success, do you think now it's harder to be successful in politics? And I'm going to put the word negative here, and it's not just negative attacks on a campaign. There just seems to be, for lack of a better term, a vibe out there that people are always, it's a politician. What's the ulterior motive? And you just, no, here's my proposal. I want to do X, Y, and Z because of A, B, and C. It's not, there's not an ulterior motive, but I think, and I think the condition is pervasive. It's amongst people that are involved in politics, it's amongst the public, and maybe it's not totally unjustified, but I think there's a sense of, like I said, there's a negative vibe out there. Is it harder to be successful with that?
Well, I don't know. It's harder to be successful. It is harder to be effective when people assume the worst. And so that's the piece that you always try to tamp back if you can. You try to make sure that people understand that there are good motives. But you're right. People are hurting. People are more apt to lash out because things aren't exactly the way that they'd like to have them. We're all strapped in the communities. We're all strapped for funding, and so a lot of what we've been doing has been trying to squeeze more out of less, and that really does mean that the level of service may not change, but the quality might. Or vice versa, the quality of service may not change, but it may take a little longer to get that quality. And sometimes you have to make hard decisions, and in local government especially, the decisions you make in order to maintain, I'm very conservative fiscally, and so the decisions you make that stay within your available revenue to make sure that you don't have deficits, that you don't overspend in accounts, those decisions cost people. They cost. We had to reduce the office hours in our administration building and the municipal building, and that cost my staff 8% when it comes to how much wages they lost. And we'd love to return that. As a matter of fact, we're looking at how that would be returned now, but we don't see that money available in the near term. So yeah, when folks, especially in this bad economy, when folks have a lot of things on their mind, they tend to think the worst of others if they don't really understand what you're up to.
Yeah. It's unfortunate, but again, I think you correct it, in my opinion, kind of one step at a time, but your actions speak louder than your words, and like you said, over time. No, we had to make a tough choice about our office hours, but down the road we're going to correct that and move forward, and that's how you get that perception back. And so it's okay, it wasn't an ulterior motive, it was a legitimate need.
It was a requirement. It was either to lay people off, and that is the worst part of my job, is having to eliminate staff, and I've had to do it, and we've had layoffs. It's nice if you can retire people out so that they have a good transition, they can go to retirement. But sometimes that's not an available option, and you have to eliminate positions, and that is the hardest part of it, because we're small communities. We know the people whose jobs we're sacrificing.
Absolutely.
And it's hard. That's the hardest part of the work.
Yeah. Onto a little bit of a subject that's a little bit less intense. I want to talk about ECAT, that's East Hampton Community Television.
Great station.
Yeah, and there's a show, they're developing a show down there called Ask Mike. Could you tell us about the show?
Sure. It's an idea that actually came from Kathy Lynch at the station, and we've been talking about it for probably over a year now.
Okay.
It ties into the fact that we just created a new studio at the municipal building so that we can broadcast city council school committee meetings. We created a city council space on the second floor, had a local school of architectural woodworking build the seating arrangement for it. It's a beautiful place. And we installed cameras and control room equipment there so we can broadcast live over the government channel. And so we're trying to figure out lots of new ways. How do we get information to people? How do we answer questions where you and I might sit and have a conversation, and there's you got an answer to a question that was you were burning to get an answer to. Well, others should be able to hear that answer. because they probably have the same question. So
Yeah,
that's what
yeah,
the effort of
yeah,
Ask Mike
yeah.
is, and we've taped a couple of shows now. It's going over well. People are happy about it.
Great, great.
And I think we're getting good information out so that people understand where we're going with the high school project, with solar photovoltaics, with pretty much all the projects and activities that are going on in the community.
Yeah, outstanding. Yeah, before I forget, I want to thank Kathy on air because she helped arrange the interview. So, Kathy, thank you very much. Mike, the last question, and I want to ask you, what does the future hold for Mike? What are you looking to do after?
Well, another 2 years running for re-election as mayor of East Hampton, and so the future holds, hopefully, another 2 years as mayor of East Hampton.
Yes.
At the end of that term, we'll have completed all of the projects that I've started, and I don't know. I'm not really thinking about running for re-election.
Okay.
I think this last term is going to be a transition. We've created a very successful government in East Hampton. East Hampton's been moving forward, and so this next 2 years we're going to finish some projects that are started: the high school project, solar photovoltaics, some energy conservation activities, and work so that there's a smooth transition to who might be the next leader in my community.
Great. On that note,
Joe, pleasure to be here.
no,
sir.
thank you so much for taking the time to come up and give us a nice detailed synopsis of East Hampton
Oh, you're
in your
most
term.
welcome.
And thank you and good luck. Thank you for watching this month's The Western Mass Democrat. I will see you next month.